Happy times. At the heart of Washington, an ambassador in his element. And then an abrupt end after the leaking of sensitive cables lambasting Donald Trump, incurring his wrath.
We're not big fans of that man, and he has not served the UK well.
Mr. Johnson.
A decisive factor in Sir Kim's decision was the failure of Boris Johnson to voice support.
I will keep him until he's due to retire, and I think we'd like to know if you would.
Well, I'm not going to be so presumptuous.
Rowing back today?
Hi, look, I just heard that Kim Darroch resigned, and I want to say that I regret that, really, because I think he was a superb diplomat, and I worked with him for many years, and I think that whoever leaked his diptels really has done a grave disservice to our civil servants, to people who give impartial advice to ministers, and I hope that whoever did it is run down, caught and eviscerated, quite frankly.
Until yesterday afternoon, Sir Kim had planned to weather the storm, but the lack of support from Boris Johnson and a fresh Twitter outburst from Donald Trump convinced him to go on his terms. In a letter to the head of the Foreign Office, Sir Kim wrote,
"Since the leak of official documents from this embassy, there has been a great deal of speculation surrounding my position and the duration of my remaining term as ambassador. I want to put an end to that speculation. The current situation is making it impossible for me to carry out my role as I would like."
We have always believed in sharing the necessary information with all officials who needed to know. And over decades, that system has served us well. But clearly, right now, it is under unprecedented pressure.
Cabinet ministers who banged the table in support of Sir Kim Darroch here at their weekly meeting yesterday are spitting tacks at his departure. One minister said to me, "This is what happens when you have a stupid, spoilt child as president." As for Boris Johnson's less than equivocal support for Sir Kim, another minister accused him of a despicable and cowardly act.
I don't know what was going through Kim Darroch's mind, but I can imagine that if you're sitting in Washington and you are feeling pretty beleaguered with tweets coming in from the president, you never know what's going to be said, you are going to look first of all for the staunchest support back home. He had that from the Prime Minister, he had supportive words from Jeremy Hunt. They were very obviously lacking in what Boris Johnson said last night. In my own mind, that must have been a factor in Kim's decision.
Lord Ricketts is disappointed in Boris Johnson, who tried to make amends today by telephoning Sir Kim.
I can imagine he had in the front of his mind the relationship with President Trump, but as his Prime Minister, you've got to have the capacity to deal with all sorts of different factors and angles at the same time. And the angle of the signal that would send to your ambassador and your civil service clearly wasn't there.
Boris Johnson threw Kim Darroch under a bus because he wants to stay on the right side of the American president. What has happened to our country? People are not stupid. People are not stupid. They can see the next Prime Minister refusing to stand up for him the night before, and then the next day, him realising that his position was untenable. Any decent Prime Minister would have said, "I stand by my ambassador, and I don't care what the American president says. He's one of ours, and we stand with ours."
A senior Tory fears for British diplomacy.
But what's concerning here is that the reactions of a head of state, a host government, has caused a British ambassador to feel that their position was untenable, even though all they were doing is what diplomats do, which is to report factually on the situation they find. And there is a danger here that Britain looks weak, looks able to be bullied, and looks like it won't stand up for those it sends abroad. And that is a very dangerous lesson.
Crisis in the Foreign Office after one of their own fell on his sword. This story is far from over as they await a successor.
What? Now, earlier I asked Sir Michael Fallon, former Defence Secretary and a prominent Boris Johnson supporter, whether last night's debate performance didn't simply show that Johnson is afraid of incurring the president's wrath.
Oh, certainly not. He has a very good relationship with Donald Trump.
But why was he so reluctant to give Kim Darroch his backing in that debate last night?
No, first he wanted to focus on the real issue.
It's almost like he was afraid of upsetting Donald Trump.
That's nonsense. He certainly regrets Kim Darroch's resignation, but he wanted to focus on the issue here, which is this most appalling leak, one of the most damaging things to have happened to the Foreign Office in living memory. And he wanted to emphasise that the cause of Darroch's resignation, of course, is the leak, and we want the leaker caught, investigated and prosecuted. This is a breach of the Official Secrets Act.
In that context, he used a phrase about ministers leaking. Does that mean he suspects that the source of this Kim Darroch leak was possibly a minister?
Well, we don't know who the source of the leak was. What we do know, it was extremely damaging. And from the moment it happened on Sunday, Sir Kim Darroch's position became extremely difficult.
But he could have, as an ex-Foreign Secretary, he could have said something more positive in defence of Sir Kim Darroch.
Well, the damage, of course, was done on Sunday by publication of these leaks. It was then done on Monday by the fact that Kim Darroch was cut out of key meetings with the administration. And then, of course, he was undermined on the Tuesday by the President himself, with being attacked personally by a tweet of the President's, and he also attacked our own Prime Minister. So by that stage, I think Sir Kim realised, long before the debate last night, which, by the way, we understand he did not watch, long before that, Sir Kim Darroch's position had become very, very difficult.
Do you know that he decided to go before the debate?
It's my very firm understanding that Kim Darroch did not watch the debate last night.
But you don't know, because there are some reports this evening that he'd already made a decision before the debate.
I think he would have been considering his position right back on Sunday when all this material was put into the public domain. And I think it's the measure of the man that he wanted to remove himself from being any kind of difficulty to our relationship with the United States. He did the honourable thing.
Now, you mentioned before Boris Johnson as Foreign Secretary being unafraid to voice points of difference with the US over Iran, for example. I mean, do you think as Prime Minister he's going to be forthright with President Trump?
Boris has a very strong personal relationship with the President. He's had that right since the spring of 2017 when the President started his administration. But I've worked alongside Boris as Defence Secretary when he was Foreign Secretary, and he hasn't hesitated to criticise American policy where he disagrees with it. Iran was an example, but you can expect Boris, if he is Prime Minister, as I hope, you can expect him to thoroughly defend the British interest, and sometimes that differs from the American interest.
Now, you've obviously been part of Team Boris, call it what you will, supporting him in the leadership campaign. Are you surprised that what one might have hoped would be a honeymoon period of party unity already seems to be fraying? If you look at what people have been saying today, Sir John Major on the proroguing Parliament issue, Alan Duncan on Kim Darroch, I mean, it seems to be rats in a sack before he's even in Downing Street.
Well, that's because Brexit, of course, naturally, was a divisive issue. And it's because we haven't completed Brexit that these divisions have gone on. Now, what Boris is going to do is bring a fresh focus. There will be a fresh negotiation to this, and we'll get Brexit done.
Does he get it done, as some people read into his recent comments, by extending the so-called implementation period, keeping us under the single market and customs union rules in order to avoid a backstop?
There's a very good reason why Boris hasn't gone into the precise detail of the negotiation that he would like to start with the European Union. Of course, he wants to maintain the maximum flexibility as you go into those negotiations. But yes, a lot of this is going to have to be looked at again. The agreement that was negotiated by the current cabinet, including Jeremy Hunt, has failed. It failed to get through Parliament, and we've been becalmed since Christmas. So we have to look at this again. And these issues, like the backstop and the future customs relationship with the European Union, have to be examined again, both here and indeed in Brussels and some of the other important capitals that matter, like Dublin.
In terms of the relationship with the civil service, the diplomatic service, possible damage, you've got the Permanent Under-Secretary at the Foreign Office tweeting tonight that he held a meeting of solidarity, that it was the strongest sentiment he'd felt in 4 years in that position. How is Prime Minister Boris Johnson going to get that back on track?
Boris Johnson has made it absolutely clear that he supports all our diplomats, all those in post at the moment, and if he becomes Prime Minister, he will absolutely depend on them and rely on them, as I did when I was Defence Secretary.
And will he send someone like Richard Tice to be ambassador, or William Hague, I mean, all sorts of names are being bandied about, aren't they? Apolitical ambassador to Washington.
Well, Boris Johnson has been very careful not to be presumptuous in any kind of way, not to presume that he's going to win. Of course, he hopes he's going to win, but he's not been making job offers to anybody or thinking about appointments. At the moment, the responsibility for our embassy in Washington lies with the current Foreign Secretary and with the current Prime Minister.
And the Foreign Office, can they assume it'll be a professional diplomat?
Well, it's for the next Prime Minister to make that decision on the advice of the Foreign Secretary of the day. It's been very rare to make a non-professional appointment like that. I think we've had a huge benefit from having non-political ambassadors in our key posts.
Michael Fallon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Nick Watt, political editor, is here now. Nick, Team Boris Johnson saying on the one hand, no, Kim Darroch made his decision before the debate, or strongly implying that. Other versions from other people. It's important, this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's important to say that Boris Johnson and Sir Kim Darroch did speak on the telephone today, but this claim by the Boris Johnson camp that Sir Kim was moving towards resigning from before that television debate, that, as I understand it, is not true. I understand the position was that until yesterday, Sir Kim did want to stay in post, but he decided after the television debate to resign, and there were a series of factors at play. Factor number one was that less than unequivocal support from Boris Johnson. Factor number two was a second Twitter storm from Donald Trump. And factor number three was the cancellation of a meeting that he was meant to attend between Liam Fox, the International Trade Secretary, and his US counterpart, Wilbur Ross. So the television debate wasn't the only factor, but it was a factor in Kim Darroch's decision.